Today, I'm going to tell you a story so forbidden it defied war, so passionate it rewrote destiny, set against the burning skies of the American West. A land where golden deserts shimmered with beauty by day and echoed with gunfire by dawn. A place where survival meant choosing between hatred and mercy, and where fate waited in the narrow shadow of a canyon. It began with an ambush at sunrise. Just one brutal moment that shattered a young woman's world and forced her into the arms of the man she had been raised to call her enemy. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The fall of 1872 came down over the Sonoran like a quiet blessing, smoothing the hard, jagged lines of the desert beneath a spill of honey-colored light. The sun washed the land in gold so soft it almost made a body forget how merciless this country could be. Saguaros stood tall across the hills like old watchmen, their crooked arms lifted as if in surrender or praise. Clusters of red ocotillo burned against the pale sand, bright as open wounds turned strangely beautiful by time. The air carried the sharp sweetness of creosote and wild sage, that clean scent that rises after rain and makes the desert feel ancient and newborn all at once. It was into this land of stark contrasts, where life and death walked side by side, that Alara Cade rode toward the end of everything she had known, and the beginning of something she could never have imagined. She had come west with her father's trading outfit, another bold gamble dreamed up by Eastern men hungry for fortune in territories they barely understood. Too many graves already marked the cost of that kind of ambition. Alara never wanted to make the journey. She had pleaded with Thorn Cade to leave her in Tucson with the other wives and daughters. She warned him the trail he meant to take cut straight through land still held by Apache bands, no matter what the army claimed in their reports. But Thorn was a man who trusted only his own judgment. He insisted she ride with him, maybe thinking her presence would ward off bad luck, maybe because she was all the family he had left and he could not bear the thought of distance. The attack struck at dawn on the 7th morning. Their wagons had been drawn into a narrow canyon for shade, stone walls rising high on both sides. Shelter, Alara had thought the night before. By sunrise, she understood it was a trap. She remembered the sound before anything else. A sharp, rising war cry that seemed to split the sky and ricochet off the canyon walls until it swallowed the world whole. Then everything broke apart. Men shouting, horses shrieking, rifle shots snapping through the cold morning air, smoke, dust, blood. Alara fought her way toward the wagon where she had last seen her father. She never reached him. Something slammed into the back of her skull, a blinding burst of pain that sent her crashing into darkness. When she woke, the world had changed. She lay on a bed of thick furs that smelled of smoke and crushed sage. Late afternoon light filtered through the rough walls of a brush shelter, glowing amber. Her head pounded so fiercely she could hardly breathe. When she tried to lift her hand, white-hot pain shot through her arm. It wouldn't move. Cloth bindings held it tight against her side. Panic swelled in her chest. She opened her mouth to scream. "Don't!" The voice came from her left, low, steady, speaking English with a trace of something older beneath it. "Your arm's broken. Your head's cut bad. If you fight it, you'll only make it worse." Alara turned her head inch by inch, swallowing back nausea, and saw him. He sat cross-legged beside a small fire, dark eyes fixed on her, unreadable. His long black hair fell loose over his shoulders. The lines of his clothing, the set of his posture. Apache. There was no mistaking it. He was younger than she expected, near 30 perhaps. His face would have been striking if it hadn't been so carefully guarded, every feeling locked away behind a stillness that gave nothing for free. "Where am I?" she rasped, her throat raw as sand. "Where's my father? What happened to the others?" He rose in one smooth motion and knelt beside her with quiet grace. He lifted a small cup to her lips. The water was cool and clean, and she drank without hesitation, relief flooding her body. When she finished, he set the cup aside. "Your father is dead," he said. There was no cruelty in his tone, only fact. "The others too. You were the only one breathing when I found you. I thought you were gone like the rest, but your heart was still beating. So I brought you here." The words should have shattered her. She should have wept, screamed, torn at her bindings. Instead, a strange numbness wrapped around her thoughts, dull and distant, as if the horror belonged to someone else's life. The blow to her head had sealed her grief behind thick walls she couldn't reach. "Why?" she whispered. "Why save me?" He fell silent, eyes lowering to the dirt between them. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its edge. "I don't know. Maybe I've seen enough death. Maybe you looked like someone I once lost." A pause. "Maybe the spirits weren't finished with you." His gaze lifted to hers again. For a moment, something flickered there. Compassion, perhaps? Or curiosity? "What matters is this. You're alive." In the days that followed, she learned his name. He was called Zevra, nephew to Talruk, a name that carried weight among his people. Zevra, taken from a southern tongue, meaning jaguar. His mother had given it to him long ago. He was known as a capable warrior, though he lived apart from the main bands, choosing solitude over the politics and feuds that consumed them. He had found the massacre by chance, drawn by the smoke of burning wagons. He'd meant to ride on, until he saw the faint rise and fall of her chest among the bodies. Her injuries were grave, but not beyond mending. Zevra said it plainly, the way a man does who has seen far worse. Her arm had been broken clean, and he said it with practiced hands. The gash along her temple had bled hard, but the skull beneath was whole. "You'll heal," he told her, "if you rest. And don't do anything foolish." Rest was the only thing she was capable of. For days she drifted in and out of sleep. Dreams came hot and violent, flashes of gunfire, flames licking wagon wheels, her father's face frozen in shock. Sometimes she woke to find Zevra beside her, changing bandages or pressing broth to her lips. Other times she woke alone, fire reduced to embers, wind whispering against the shelter walls like a restless spirit. As strength slowly returned to her body, awareness followed. She began to study him when he wasn't looking. The quiet strength in his movements, the way he conserved motion, the tension that never fully left his shoulders. There was something untamed about him, something shaped by harsh land and harder losses. He had stumbled onto slaughter and chosen mercy. And against everything she had been raised to believe, Elara Cade found herself wondering who he truly was beneath that guarded stare. At times, she surfaced from uneasy sleep and found Zevra kneeling beside her, replacing the bandage at her temple or lifting broth to her lips, with a steadiness that clashed with every warning she had ever heard about men like him. Other times she woke alone. The fire would be reduced to a dull red glow, the shelter hushed except for the wind slipping through the brush walls like it had breath of its own. As strength crept back into her limbs, her awareness sharpened too. She began watching him when he thought she slept. She studied the quiet efficiency of his movements, the way his expression shifted when no one was there to see it. The realization struck her without mercy. He was beautiful, not in a polished parlor room way, but in the fierce, untamed way of something born to the land. Every motion was lean and deliberate, built for survival. His face was carved in hard lines, high cheekbones, a firm jaw, a mouth that seemed fashioned for words he rarely allowed himself to speak. And his eyes, dark and fathomless, held something that pulled at her, depths she wanted to understand, even as instinct warned her to keep her distance. She should have feared him. Every lesson drilled into her since childhood. Every story whispered in drawing rooms back east. Every grim warning Thorne Cade had ever spoken about the savages of the frontier. Those memories told her she should be plotting escape, not lying under his roof while he tended her wounds with careful hands. But fear required strength she did not yet possess. And beyond that, he could have killed her. He could have left her in that canyon among the dead. Instead, he had carried her away from the smoke and blood and given her back her life. There was nothing monstrous in the quiet patience of the man who changed her bandages. By the third week, she could sit upright without the world tilting. She could feed herself with her good arm. That was when something new began to stir inside her. Zevra was replacing the dressing along her hairline, fingers light against her skin, his face close as he examined the healing cut. She had grown used to studying him at such moments, memorizing the small crease that formed between his brows when he concentrated. Then he looked up. Their eyes locked. The air shifted. It was not imagination. Something passed between them, swift and electric. Her breath caught. Her pulse thundered against her ribs. He drew back sharply, as if the contact had burned him. His features hardened, shuddered. Without a word, he gathered the soiled cloths, refusing to meet her gaze. Heat rushed to Alara's cheeks. Embarrassment tangled with something far more dangerous. She had known longing before. The soft ache of girlhood crushes, the polite interest of courtship. But this was different. This was raw, immediate. A hunger that flared through her like prairie fire. The days that followed tested them both. She watched Zevra differently now. She noticed the ripple of muscle beneath his skin when he lifted water or chopped wood, the smooth bend of his back when he knelt by the fire, the rare, startling brightness of his smile when something amused him. She invented reasons to call him close, needing help adjusting a blanket, asking him to steady her when she stood. Each excuse brought him within reach, close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from his body, to breathe in the faint scent of smoke and sage that clung to him. She knew it was reckless, foolish, a path that could only end in heartbreak. Still, the wanting rooted itself deeper each day. Zevra was not untouched by it. She caught him watching her when he believed her asleep. His gaze would linger on her face with a hunger he tried and failed to conceal. When he touched her, even in the name of care, his fingers sometimes lingered a second longer than necessary. Across the firelight their eyes would meet, and in his she saw it plainly. The same heat she battled in herself. A restraint stretched thin as rawhide. The breaking came on a night when the desert wind roared outside like something alive. Shadows from the fire leapt wild along the shelter walls. Her arm had healed enough for the binding to be removed. Zevra unwound the cloth slowly, exposing pale skin to the cool air. She flexed her fingers, marveling at the freedom she had nearly forgotten. When she looked up to thank him, she found him closer than she realized. His face hovered inches from hers. His breath brushed her lips. His eyes burned with an emotion he no longer tried to bury. Time seemed to stop. The tension between them drew tight, straining, until the silence itself felt alive. Alara knew this was the moment that would divide her life into before and after. She knew she should pull back, should remember the war between their peoples, the danger, the impossibility of it all. But her body chose first. When Zevra leaned nearer, she did not retreat. He held her gaze as he lowered himself beside her, slow and deliberate, leaving space for her to refuse him. His hand rose to her cheek, His fingers traced the curve of her jaw with a reverence that made her tremble. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, voice roughened by emotion. "And I will." Alara searched his eyes, the same dark eyes that had watched over her while she lay broken. In them she saw the struggle he had fought, the honor that demanded her choice, the love he had tried to deny. She saw a warrior shaped by violence who now handled her as if she were something sacred. "I don't want you to stop," she said, steady despite the storm inside her chest. "I want this. I want you. I've wanted you longer than I was willing to admit." The last of his restraint gave way. He kissed her, and the world beyond the firelight disappeared. His kiss was slow at first, careful, almost reverent, stealing the air from her lungs. What began as tenderness deepened by degrees, turning urgent, fierce, impossible to resist. Alara didn't hesitate. Her good arm slid around Zevra's neck, drawing him down, kneading the solid heat of him against her. He gathered her close, mindful of her healing wounds, yet no longer able to keep the careful distance honor had demanded for so long. Firelight flickered over their skin as they moved together, shedding the walls that had once divided them. They learned each other in silence at first, hands exploring with patience, each touch deliberate, unhurried, almost sacred. Zevra undid the buttons of her borrowed dress one by one, his fingers steady, as though he understood the weight of the moment. When she lay bare before him, he paused. The look in his eyes made her throat tighten. Wonder, awe, a quiet gratitude that made her feel seen in a way she never had before. "I've witnessed things in this life most men never will," he murmured. Sunsets that turned the mountains to fire. Stars falling like sparks from heaven. Beauty too wild for words. His thumb brushed softly across her cheek, then her lips. "But nothing compares to you." Emotion flooded her. She pulled him down to her, closing the last space between them. Her hands moved over him, tracing the strong planes of his chest, the scars etched into his skin, stories she would one day ask him to tell. He was solid and powerful, shaped by hardship and survival. When their bodies finally came together, a sharp cry broke from her, pleasure so intense it nearly hurt. They found a rhythm that felt older than memory, as if some deep part of them had always known the steps. No instruction, no hesitation, only instinct and trust bridging the distance history had carved between them. Zevra watched her carefully, adjusting to every breath, every tremor. He read her like a map, guiding her closer and closer to the edge until she could barely hold on. When release came, it swept through her like a desert storm. Sudden, overwhelming, unstoppable. The night stretched endlessly. They explored one another with the curiosity of pioneers charting new land. Between moments of passion, they spoke in low voices, sharing pieces of themselves long buried. Alara told him of her childhood back east, of Boston winters, of Maeve Cade's gentle laughter before illness stole her away, of Thorne Cade's grief that drove him west in search of something he could not name. Zevra spoke of his people, of their customs, their quiet strength, their battles to endure. He told her of Sihona, the wife he had once loved, and of the child she carried, Kiona, who never drew breath. Loss had hollowed him out, driven him to the solitude where Alara had found him. He did not hide the darker truths. He had taken lives, white men, Mexicans, even Apache when conflict demanded it. His hands bore more than scars. None of it lessened what she felt. At dawn, pale light slipped through the shelter walls. Alara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat beneath her ear. "I was raised to hate you," she said softly. "Everything I was taught says I should fear you, that I should be grateful for your mercy. but never let myself feel this. And yet, Zevra's fingers traced slow circles along her shoulder. And yet, I love you. The words felt solid and sure. I love you, Zevra. I don't care how wrong the world thinks it is. When I'm with you, I feel alive. When you look at me, I see someone I'm not ashamed to be. Silence settled between them. Fear flickered inside her. Fear she had offered more than he could return. Then he shifted, rolling so he could see her face clearly. I loved you the first day, he said quietly, when I lifted you from the canyon floor and saw life still fighting in your eyes. His voice thickened. I told myself it was foolish, that you'd leave once you were healed, that I should harden my heart. He pressed a kiss to her brow, then her lips. But the heart doesn't obey reason. It knows what it knows. The weeks that followed felt stolen from time. In his hidden dwelling, the outside world faded. Alara learned to grind corn and cook over open flame, to tan hides and stitch leather, to walk the desert with steadier steps. Zevra taught her his language, correcting her gently, pride shining when she mastered a new word. Each night they returned to one another in the glow of the fire. Familiarity did not dull their desire. It deepened it. Zevra was attentive and inventive, discovering new ways to draw pleasure from her, new heights to carry her toward before letting her fall back into his arms. And Alara changed too. She found a boldness she had never known she possessed. She learned to reach for him first, to guide and respond, to stand beside him, not as a fragile guest, but as an equal partner in passion and in life. In loving Zevra, she was no longer the girl who had ridden west behind her father's wagon. She was becoming something entirely her own. They both understood the truth, even when neither spoke it aloud. What they had built in that hidden stretch of desert could not exist untouched forever. The world beyond their shelter had not vanished simply because they chose to ignore it. The army still hunted the Apache responsible for the slaughter of Thorncade's trading party. Zevra's people were still locked in a fight to survive, a struggle that might one day force him to choose between blood and love. And Alara was still, in the eyes of her own nation, bound to a country that called the man she loved an enemy. But for those stolen weeks, they refused to bow to the future. They lived fiercely in the present, pulling every drop of joy from each sunrise and every ounce of warmth from every night. They loved with a kind of desperation that did not deny danger, only defied it. Early winter arrived quietly. Frost glazed the desert floor in silver. The air carried a sharp edge that hinted at colder days ahead. One morning, wrapped together in furs while the fire smoldered low, they finally spoke of what lay beyond their fragile peace. Golden light filtered through the brush walls, catching dust motes in the air. Alara traced the line of Zevra's jaw with her fingertip, committing the feel of him to memory. The faint roughness of stubble, the steady strength beneath her touch. I'm not leaving you, she said softly. Whatever comes. Wherever you ride, I ride. The woman who followed my father west died in that canyon with him. I'm not her anymore. I was reborn here, with you, and I belong at your side. Zevra took her hand and pressed his lips to her palm. His voice was steady, but heavy with truth. The life ahead won't be easy. There will be hunger, cold, war. My people are not welcomed with open arms, and neither will you be. Some will always see your pale skin and call you enemy. I know, Alara answered without hesitation. I'd rather face hardship with you than comfort without you. I would rather risk everything than go back to a life that no longer fits. She lifted his chin so he had no choice but to meet her eyes. Tell me you want me to stay. Tell me this isn't just something beautiful that ends when it becomes difficult. He studied her face as if searching for doubt. He found none. A slow smile broke across his features, that rare expression she treasured more than gold. I want you beside me, he said, as my wife, in the way of my people, bound together by promises stronger than fear, stronger than death. I want to wake beside you each morning and sleep with you each night. I want years with you, children with you, a life that proves the world wrong. He pulled her into his arms with quiet ferocity. I love you, Alara. I will love you until the stars burn out and the rivers run dry. That is my vow. Their wedding was unlike anything she had known. The ceremony was woven from traditions older than any church she had ever entered. She did not understand every word spoken, but she understood the meaning. Messengers carried word across the territory, and people came to see the white woman who had chosen Zevra. Some eyes were hard with suspicion. Others held open contempt. But there were many who looked at her and saw what Zevra saw. Love unshaken, fierce and unwavering. In time, acceptance grew. The years ahead tested them in ways neither could have imagined. There were seasons of running, seasons of hiding. Losses that fell like autumn leaves. Yet through every trial, they held fast to one another. Stories began to spread. Of Zevra, the warrior who defied expectation. Of Alara Cade, the woman who chose love over the lines drawn by history. Their children, Ronan and Isolde, grew up between two worlds, speaking both languages, carrying both legacies. They became living proof that hatred is learned and love is chosen. And each night, no matter how harsh the day had been, they found their way back to one another in the dark with the same hunger, the same devotion that had begun beside a low-burning fire. Sometimes Zevra would murmur, just as he had that first night, "Tell me to stop." And Alara would smile against his lips and answer the way she always had. Never. Don't ever stop. Don't ever let me go. He never did. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours, thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal/disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals, narration, and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.